Sue Aikens survived a grizzly bear attack that shattered her skull. She endured accidents that broke her bones and burns that nearly cost her an arm. The woman who conquered Alaska's deadliest wilderness seemed invincible to millions of viewers. But the tragedy that truly destroyed her wasn't inflicted by any predator or natural disaster. It came from losing the people she loved most. What happened behind the cameras of Life Below Zero reveals a heartbreaking story of exploitation, family loss, and a woman pushed beyond her breaking point. The legend of Sue Aikens began with an attack that should have been her obituary. In 2007, years before cameras ever rolled at Kavik River Camp, a massive grizzly bear had been burying caribou carcasses near her helicopter landing pad. Sue knew those rotting remains had to be moved, but the 800-pound predator had claimed that territory as his own. When she approached the river to get water, rifle set aside to operate the pump, the bear made his move. What happened next defied every survival instinct. The grizzly snatched her up and dragged her into the open tundra, his massive paws dislocating both her hips before his jaws clamped down on her skull. Sue could hear her own bones snapping as the bear shook her like prey. But instead of screaming or fighting, she went completely limp, playing dead in a gamble that could have backfired catastrophically. The strategy worked. When the bear finally dropped her broken body, Sue was still conscious, bleeding from deep head wounds, and unable to walk properly. Sue did something that seems impossible. She stitched her torn scalp together with her own hands, manipulated her dislocated hips back into place, then tracked down the same bear that had mauled her and put a bullet through its skull. For 10 agonizing days, she waited alone in her cabin with massive trauma, the nearest help hundreds of miles away. The pain was so severe it fundamentally changed her, teaching her what real fear felt like. By 2015, Sue had transformed from an unknown wilderness woman into reality television's toughest survivor. Life Below Zero made her famous, but according to a shocking lawsuit she filed, that fame came at a devastating cost. Sue claimed that producer Aaron Melman was verbally abusive and forced her into life-threatening situations for better footage. The breaking point came during filming for an episode called The Crash. Sue wanted to use her reliable ATV for a camping expedition, but Melman allegedly demanded she take a snow machine instead. When she suggested hunting ptarmigan, a genuine survival opportunity, the producer forced her to drive across dangerous river overflow at high speed. Sue protested, knowing that overflow ice could collapse and trap her beneath frozen water. Melman's response, according to the lawsuit, was to scream that she had no choice but to obey his commands. The crash was brutal. Sue's snow machine hit an ice ridge, launching her through the air before she slammed into the frozen ground. She heard her bones snap on impact, her collarbone shattered, along with other serious injuries. But the alleged cruelty didn't end there. Instead of immediately calling for medical evacuation, Sue claimed the crew delayed her rescue to capture more dramatic footage. She was forced to ride 6 miles back to camp on a snow machine in -20-degree weather, her winter gear removed, essentially naked from the waist up. When the rescue plane finally arrived, producers allegedly made it land miles away so they could film Sue walking in excruciating pain. Just when fans thought Sue's accident-prone life couldn't get more dangerous, another disaster struck in while working near her stove during one of Alaska's most brutal cold snaps. With wind chills hitting -104 degrees, Sue slipped, and her arm became pinned against the stove's red-hot metal stack. The searing heat instantly welded her flesh to the surface, and she could smell her own skin burning as blisters formed down to the muscle tissue. With no planes able to fly in the extreme weather and emergency services unreachable, Sue was completely alone with a potentially life-threatening injury. The burn was so severe that it bubbled and charred her entire hand and forearm. Many people have died from similar accidents in remote Alaska, not from the injury itself, but from infection or shock when medical help can't arrive in time. Sue had to become her own emergency room again, treating the horrific wound with whatever supplies she had on hand. The injury could have easily cost her the arm, and in her isolated location, that kind of loss might have meant the end of her ability to survive independently. She later described the incident as one of her closest calls with death, a sobering reminder that in her world, even the simplest tasks can turn deadly in seconds. The accident highlighted just how fragile the line between survival and catastrophe really is in the Alaskan wilderness. Sue's 2017 lawsuit against BBC and Life Below Zero producers exposed disturbing allegations about reality television's dark side. The 32-page legal document didn't just detail the snow machine crash, it painted a picture of systematic abuse and exploitation, Sue claimed her contract was so restrictive that she felt forced to risk her life whenever producers demanded it, with no right to refuse dangerous scenarios. The lawsuit alleged that producer Aaron Melman consumed 6 gallons of whiskey during shoots, including Sue's personal supply, while making increasingly reckless demands. She was allegedly forced to work in -72-degree wind chills without proper face protection because Melman wanted viewers to see her expressions clearly. When she objected to dangerous scenes, he allegedly screamed at both her and safety personnel, establishing that his word was law regardless of anyone's well-being. Most damning were allegations that after her crash, the production team prioritized dramatic footage over Sue's medical needs. Instead of calling for immediate helicopter evacuation, they allegedly chose cheaper ground transport, forcing Sue to endure hours of additional agony. The lawsuit claimed they used footage and materials to create a fictionalized version of the incident, making Sue appear responsible for what she alleged was a producer-mandated stunt. While BBC never publicly responded to the specific allegations, Sue continued appearing on the show, suggesting some form of settlement occurred. The case raised serious questions about how far reality TV producers will push their stars for compelling content. The wilderness had tested Sue with bears, accidents and burns, but nothing prepared her for the devastation that struck in 20. Within a short period, she lost 2 of the most important people in her life, her sister Pam and her beloved granddaughter, Drew McClurg. Both deaths came suddenly, leaving Sue emotionally shattered in ways that no physical injury ever had. Drew was just 19 years old, a vibrant young woman who had celebrated her 18th birthday with a loving Instagram post from her grandmother. Sue had called Drew her mini-me, and the close bond between them was evident in every photo and message they shared. When Drew died in September 2023, Sue was left to process grief that cut deeper than any bear attack or broken bone. The specific cause of Drew's death has never been publicly disclosed, with the family choosing to keep those painful details private. Adding to the tragedy, Sue's sister Pam passed away around the same time. In a heartbreaking Instagram post, Sue shared a video of Pam waving goodbye and saying "I love you" without sound, a silent farewell that seemed prophetic in hindsight. Sue wrote that life could be very poetic, noting how the video captured Pam's final message without a voice, which in death's embrace she cannot use. The double loss left Sue dealing with grief that seemed incompatible with her tough exterior. During a Life Below Zero episode titled On the Auroras, Sue broke down while paying tribute to both women. Fans watched in shock as the seemingly unbreakable survivor wept openly, her vulnerability more powerful than any dramatic rescue or survival feat the show had ever captured. While Sue battled personal demons and physical injuries, she was quietly using her fame and income for something remarkable, helping others survive their own struggles. Despite facing constant medical bills and equipment costs for her remote lifestyle, Sue has consistently given away significant portions of her earnings to people in desperate need. She's particularly passionate about helping veterans, including a female veteran who lost limbs overseas and was later abandoned by her spouse. Sue not only contributed her own money but organized donations to pay off the woman's house, ensuring she wouldn't lose her home. She maintains relationships with autistic individuals and their families, attending Paralympics events and facilitating special experiences for children who struggle with social connections. For over a decade, Sue has offered free trips to any young man who achieves Eagle Scout status and contacts her, viewing it as a modern rite of passage in a world that's forgotten how to mark important milestones for young people. Her home is filled with artwork sent by children from around the world, and she meticulously keeps every piece despite limited space. She's helped families facing corporate downsizing, individuals dealing with autism, and countless others who've reached out through her show. Sue describes this giving as her way of blessing people, acknowledging that her platform comes with responsibility. She's often frustrated by equipment companies that prefer sponsoring male outdoorsmen, so she's learned to repair and modify her own gear. The irony isn't lost. The woman who lives in complete isolation is deeply connected to a community of people she's never met but consistently supports through their darkest moments. After 23 seasons and over a decade of documenting extreme survival, Life Below Zero was canceled in 2024, marking the end of an era for both Sue and reality television. The show that made her a household name and gave her a platform to inspire millions had run its course, leaving Sue to face an uncertain future without the steady income that supported both her lifestyle and her charitable giving. The cancellation came amid widespread cuts in Hollywood, but for Sue it meant more than just losing a job. It meant losing her voice. The show had been her way of demonstrating that people could live differently, that self-reliance and connection to nature were still possible in an increasingly disconnected world. More importantly, it provided the financial foundation that allowed her to help so many others. Chip Hailstone, another longtime cast member, confirmed the news with a simple statement. "Well folks, it's official. Life Below Zero has run its course. No contract, no life below zero." Sue's response was more cautious, noting she had asked for some clarification from corporate, but the writing was on the wall. At 62, Sue faced the prospect of maintaining her expensive, isolated lifestyle without television income, while still dealing with chronic pain from years of injuries and the emotional trauma of recent losses. Yet those who know Sue's story understand that if anyone can reinvent herself after such devastating setbacks, it's the woman who survived a bear attack, multiple accidents, family tragedy, and the collapse of her television career. She spent her entire adult life proving that the most dangerous situations can be survived through sheer determination, adaptation, and refusing to give up when everything seems impossible. The end of Life Below Zero might not be the end of Sue Aikens' story, it might just be the beginning of her most challenging survival test yet.